excuse me. While that might be something that they're considering, the fact is that the U.S. has more than enough ways of monitoring those sites, especially the newer um, satellites can pick up basically anything. They have seismographic things. As we have seen with warfare, they also use drones, etc. I don't think that that's the real intention here. If you start looking in the larger context, the United States has tried to push a position where it is wants to interrupt the Belt and Road Initiative. Remember, the U.S. thought that it had China bottled up in the sea with its 200 bases surrounding, and five island chain strategy to bottle up China in the event of a war or to put economic pressure on it. This is not, they always like to reverse it by saying that somehow China would be the one who would interrupt trade traffic in that area. It's quite the opposite. China gets vast majority of its oil from that area. I mean, it has to transit through those areas. Also, its trade going out, value improved would suffer tremendously. We're talking about a very large part of the Chinese GDP, not necessarily going so much as it used to Europe and America, but certainly to ASEAN. So the idea that China would, literally cut its throat for some reason doesn't make sense. But it would make sense for the U.S. to say that they could threaten a blockade. The U.S. justifies that under this theory that they're protecting Taiwan, when that seems at most a very thin excuse. So given that China anticipated this about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, they started off on this BRI, which was really the Silk Road, establishing land-based and alternative routes so it could not be bottled up into one area, which would then become a flashpoint. And they've made significant progress. $1.3 trillion plus has been plowed into the Belt and Road Initiative. It has certainly helped the countries involved increase their GDP, and this is measurable by the statistics. Now, developing and emerging countries actually exceed the developed countries in terms of their growth rate. So the U.S. Is stymied by this. Donald Trump or whoever advises him came up with the brilliant idea that we will interfere with China's existing land routes. Now, very little they could do about the northern route. That would be, that's been established. A lot of talk about this container ship that transited the northern route going on the periphery of between Russia on the northern side, avoiding ice flows, etc. Then you have the middle corridor, and this is of particular interest to the United States. It involves all of the stands, and you notice that in Azerbaijan, the U.S. has made this thing with Armenia saying, "Oh, we're going to have a kind of peripheral trade route and go along in that area." Doesn't make any sense. It's not connected to anything. It's just a spoiler. And in terms of Pakistan, this idea that somehow the U.S. can have a $500 million investment in a joint development for energy in Balochistan, when Balochistan is where the CPEC is, also seems to be more at creating a spoiler than really investing in a very far-flung part of the world where, at best, it would be difficult. There are security concerns, obviously, geopolitical concerns. So when you start adding it all up together, I mean, it's not a situation where China is trying to push a particular agenda. It's the U.S. Trying to counter China by destroying these relations. And you can go back to President Trump's campaign, and even after that, where he said that his greatest fear was a alliance between China and Russia, world's number one manufacturing country with the world's number one resource country, coming together, being a existential threat to U.S. dominance, hegemony, American exceptionalism, whatever you want to call it. So in this kind of regard, the U.S. is, once again, as I said, this is all about trying to spoil China's game, break up Russia and China if they can. If they can't, interfere with alternative trade routes in the hopes that China and Russia come to blows because, they're kind of boxed in. So this is kind of where we are. There's a southern route that goes through Iran. Obviously, there are issues there, and the U.S. will continue to block that. So that's how I see the current situation. It's not about constructive; it's about destructive. Well, I mean, frankly, I think there's a sense, not in China, but in other areas that people that I've talked to from that area, including within Pakistan, that there's personal politics involved. There's a desire for office by people who are in existing power, and this has been the catalyst for meetings between Pakistan and the United States, which perhaps puzzling to China is these kind of overtures. As I mentioned before, this $500 million joint investment in developing energy in Balochistan. It doesn't make any kind of sense. Maybe it never comes to fruition, but I don't think China or Pakistan or anybody else would benefit from having a bunch of American contractors or corporations and their, quote, representatives wandering around an area which is already destabilized by this kind of terrorist independence movement. And also, the CPEC, which has been an enormous project. It's faced a lot of difficulties. This seems to add one more to them. But there's supposed to be an iron brotherhood arrangement between Pakistan and China. I think China believes that the Pakistan people, at their root, believes in this. The question now is, does the leadership? All right, there's nothing such as ironclad in a relationship. Betrayal. You can only be betrayed by somebody you trust. But betrayal is something that turns love into hatred. You see this in families, you see this in business relationships, and it's true of countries. If China or Pakistan felt betrayed by the other, obviously the relationship would change in an instant. Trust is built up over a long period of time, but can be destroyed in an instant. So although I don't anticipate that, it is troubling that there are these kind of grumblings. Exactly what is Pakistan trying to do with the U.S. in terms of, is it trying to get military technology that seem kind of odd, given the fact that its Chinese military equipment seem to work very well. What is it that Pakistan hopes to get out of this? I mean, the U.S. is a changeable environment politically. Whatever Donald Trump promises now won't be delivered while he is still president. And the only thing you know for certain is change will occur, and most likely the next president of the United States will undo a lot of what Trump is doing. So what exactly are these moves about? And have they been explained to, quote, its iron brotherhood partner, China? It is disquieting, to say the least. If I'm cavorting with somebody who's trying to suppress you, and has stated so, as the U.S. has done. I mean, they have military plans, they have economic plans that center on China. And the other, your iron brother is somehow very interested in having all sorts of meetings with them and talking about things, especially things that don't make sense, like this $500 million investment in Balochistan. It's just, there is room for questions, and obviously, trust depends on actions. Well, China is. It's not like the U.S. I mean, we've become accustomed globally to think in these kind of colonial terms, right? Everything is what can I extract from you? And you're either with me or against me. China is an Asian society, as are Pakistan, and so is the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. They tend to see things not as black and white, but as nuanced. How do we come together? It's not threatening to China, and in fact, quite the opposite, to have Pakistan and Saudi Arabia cooperating. So Pakistan has evidenced an interest in joining BRICS. It's already a member of SCO. I mean, this strengthens this idea of a global South that is being more independent. Now, I've had from very good sources that this whole thing between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia was put into place or started well before the election of Donald Trump. So, this was not something that was a knee-jerk reaction to, Donald Trump or things, but it could certainly have accelerated it. I mean, the U.S. under Donald Trump has shown that it is not a reliable entity and that it supports interests that are adverse to most of the world, especially Muslims. You start looking at, the U.S. sponsorship of Israel as it commits genocide. This is not something that's ever going to be forgotten by the Muslim community in the world. And it is, brings into question exactly how does the U.S. view others. I mean, we've seen them do a 180-degree on India, which was supposed to be, the strategic doorstop to Chinese expansion. And Modi and especially Jay Shankar are scratching their heads as to what they did wrong, especially Jay Shankar, because he was the architect and also the one who moved the implementation of these 4 defense agreements, which were supposed to put India and the U.S., quote, global democracies in sync and lead to economic fruits. And none of those have appeared. In fact, quite the opposite. You see almost a daily barrage of abuse towards India and also economic moves against them, labeling it a narco state, taking away the exemption for Gwandar Port, which is in conjunction with Iran, the 50% tariffs, the perceived involvement in 2 color revolutions around India and Bangladesh and Nepal. These are things that are sending a very strong message to India. They don't know how to react. They always thought that they could, jump back and forth and use these great powers to their advantage. Now it seems they're kind of lost at sea. They've made overtures like at the SCO. But the problem with that is, they were, it was quite clear that they were thinking they could leverage the dragon and the bear against the eagle. That hasn't happened. In fact, quite the opposite. Things have gone from bad to worse since that period of time. So India is floundering. They need to figure out what they need to do. And I think in the end, Jay Shankar will be the scapegoat that Modi has to use to say, well, who put all this stuff into play? And definitely he's been the forefront of that. I mean, remember, it was his son, an American citizen, who was working at the foundation that created this 225 plan, which is being implemented, which is very much along these lines that are antithetical to India's interests. It's a hard thing to explain. Now, the son is not working for that institute anymore in the U.S. He's now back in India. Reliance has stepped forward and given him his own think tank, kind of odd. But be that as it may, it still brings a lot of questions as to exactly what the thinking was on this kind of strategic blunder. Okay, so this is a problem. Pakistan's response to this was to say, look, we're going to have 10,000 people that are dedicated to making this happen. China is putting in a massive investment. Pakistan is supposed to be doing its side. It hasn't always met the deadlines. It has a lot of internal issues, changing politics. Also, as I referred to before, the economics are not terrific. There are internal issues, but those are things that Pakistan has to solve. In terms of Pakistan and China, there was supposed to be this kind of ironclad, guarantee of the safety of these non-combatants. These are engineers, people who are trying to help build this thing. They're not combatants. Now, in a couple of instances, there has been danger to them because they ignored the protocols that were suggested to them. And that kind of falls on them. But to the rest of it, there has to be safety. China is domestically, the people are not prepared to see engineers dying abroad when they're trying to help. That is not something. I had a very high-ranking Pakistani general say, well, China should be prepared to sacrifice people in the interests of, I don't know, Pakistan or global. And I told him flatly, that doesn't play. I mean, China sees themselves as helping. That's not including dying. They will die for the defense of their country, as will Pakistanis, but they're not going to die for the defense of another country when they're just trying to help. And that's a reality that is there. I was quite surprised that this general is pushing this idea that Chinese people should be laying down their lives against unknown forces that they have nothing to do with because it's Pakistan. That is not the definition of iron brotherhood, right? That is a definition of using another entity for your own purposes, trying to draw them in. China is not going to be drawn into regional conflicts. Everything that they've been trying to do with everything I've mentioned before about these initiatives is to create a framework for peace, for dialogue. Stop having countries dictate to each other and start having countries coming together and arriving at a consensus agreement using peer pressure, not the old colonial dictate system.